I'm Amelia Carter, 27 years old. And for almost 2 years, my parents told every employer in my hometown that I was a thief. For 23 months, I couldn't get hired anywhere in Charleston, South Carolina. Not because I wasn't qualified. Not because I lacked experience. I graduated with a 3.8 GPA in finance from the University of South Carolina. My professors wrote recommendation letters so glowing they practically shimmered on paper. But none of that mattered. Because my parents told everyone I stole from them. My father liked to phrase it differently depending on who he was speaking to. Sometimes he said I had a problem with honesty. Sometimes he called it a phase of poor judgment. But the version employers heard was much simpler. Be careful with her. She stole money from our family. And in a town the size of Charleston's professional circle, that was enough. People talk. Especially when the people doing the talking own half the contracts in the county. My father would lean back in his leather chair, swirl a glass of bourbon, and say the same thing every time I confronted him. Maybe now you'll learn respect. He believed something very specific. He believed if he cut off every opportunity one had, if he closed every door in front of me, eventually I'd come crawling back home. Back under his roof. Back under his rules. He thought 2 years of rejection would break me. He thought 2 years of watching me clean hotel bathrooms while he laughed would make me obedient. What he didn't know was that my grandmother had seen this coming 15 years earlier. And she'd already prepared for it. Before I continue, if stories like this resonate with you, take a moment to subscribe to Women Reddit Stories so you don't miss the next one. And drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is there. I read every single one. Now let me take you back to the day I discovered what my parents had really done. From the outside, the Carter family looked perfect. My father, Richard Carter, owned one of the largest commercial development firms in the Charleston area. Office parks. Apartment complexes. Hotels. If a building had gone up in the past 15 years, chances were my father's company had a hand in it. Our house sat on 5 acres just outside Mount Pleasant. A white brick colonial with tall columns and a driveway long enough to make delivery drivers sigh when they saw it. In the 3-car garage sat my father's black Porsche, my mother's Range Rover, and my brother Tyler's brand new Audi. Tyler was 4 years older than me. The golden child. The heir. He'd been groomed to take over Carter Development since he was old enough to hold a blueprint. Family dinners revolved around him. His deals. His promotions. His future. My mother, Elaine, played the role of the perfect Southern hostess. Crystal wine glasses. Fresh hydrangeas on the dining table. A smile that never cracked in public. But behind closed doors, everything revolved around my father. His moods. His opinions. His approval. And daughters, in his mind, existed for a very specific purpose. Marriage. Reputation. And staying quiet. I learned that early. When Tyler turned 21, my father sent him to London for a semester abroad through a business leadership program. No expense spared, he said proudly. When I asked about the same program 2 years later, he laughed like I'd told a joke. Why would I waste $50,000 sending you overseas, he said. You'll get married eventually. Your husband can pay for your vacations. I went to the state university instead. Commuted from home. Worked part-time. At dinner, my father carved roast beef while giving Tyler lectures about leadership. A man builds his legacy through his work, he'd say. His fork always pointed toward Tyler. Never toward me. When I was 16, I overheard something I've never forgotten. I was walking down the hallway past the kitchen when I heard my father speaking to my mother. His voice was low but sharp. Daughters don't need ambition, he said. They need stability. Amelia will marry well. That's her job. I stood there frozen outside the doorway. That was the first time I understood. In my father's eyes, I wasn't a person with dreams. I was a strategic asset. The summer before college, my parents gave me a credit card. For school necessities, my mother said, sliding it across the kitchen island. Books, supplies, whatever you need. My father barely looked up from the newspaper. Don't go crazy with it, he said. But you're covered. I was 18. Eager to prove I was responsible. I used the card exactly as instructed. Textbooks for my finance courses. A refurbished laptop from the campus store. Notebooks. A calculator. 3 months later the statement arrived. The total came to $1,040. And my father exploded. I still remember the dining room that night. The chandelier casting bright light across the table. The way my mother's face went pale when my father slammed the statement down. $1,000? He was standing now. Veins rising in his neck. Who gave you permission to spend this much? You did, I said quietly. You said it was for school. I said necessities, not a shopping spree. Richard, my mother said softly, textbooks are expensive. Stay out of this, Elaine. He turned back to me. You will pay back every cent of this. Every single cent. And until you do, you're on your own. So I worked. 2 part-time jobs. Campus library during the week. Coffee shops shift on weekends. It took 8 months. But I paid back every dollar. I kept every receipt. Every payment confirmation. Every bank record. But that wasn't the real cost. Working 25 hours a week meant I couldn't take full course loads. My 4-year degree stretched into 6 years. 2 extra years of tuition my father refused to help with. 2 extra years of commuting from home. 2 extra years of being reminded I was a burden. I thought once the debt was paid, it will be over. I was wrong. Because my father had a long memory. And he knew exactly how to weaponize it. The only person who ever made me feel like I mattered was my grandmother. Helen Carter. She wasn't soft. She'd built a chain of interior design showrooms across Georgia in the 1980s before selling the company and retiring with more money than she could ever spend. She was sharp. Observant. And she saw things other people ignored. Including what was happening inside her son's house. I spent summers at her home on Hilton Head Island when I was younger. Her house smelled like sea salt and old books. She taught me how to read balance sheets before I turned 13. How money moves tells you who people really are, she used to say. She watched my father carefully during family gatherings. I noticed the way her eyes narrowed when he dismissed me. The way her jaw tightened when Tyler was praised while I was ignored. One evening when I was 15, we sat on her back porch watching the sun sink into the ocean. She reached over and took my hand. Amelia, she said quietly. I want you to remember something. I looked at her. Her eyes were serious in a way that made my stomach twist. I've already prepared for your future. Prepared what? I asked. She smiled. But the smile didn't reach her eyes. Your father believes he can control everything, she said. But someday you might need help he won't give you. She squeezed my hand. And when that day comes, you'll be ready. I didn't understand what she meant. I was 15. I thought she was being dramatic. 3 years ago, my grandmother passed away. She was 79. At the time, I believed she'd left nothing behind except memories. I had no idea she'd left something far more powerful. She'd left a way out. And 2 years after my father destroyed my career, that plan was finally about to reveal itself. I don't believe in coincidences anymore. Because the night everything started changing was the same night my parents decided to eat dinner at the motel where I cleaned bathrooms. It was a Thursday evening. I was pushing my housekeeping cart down the service hallway of the Harborview Lodge, the wheels squeaking over the tile floor, when I heard a laugh I knew better than my own. My father's. That deep, booming laugh that always sounded like he just won something. I froze. For a moment I hoped I was imagining it. But then I heard my brother Tyler's voice, casual and amused. "Make sure we get the table by the window." My stomach dropped. I slowly leaned toward the corner of the hallway and looked around. And there they were. My father in one of his tailored navy suits. My mother is wearing pearls and a silk blouse. Tyler scrolled through his phone like the entire world existed for his mild entertainment. The hostess was leading them into the motel restaurant. Right past the corridor where I stood holding a toilet brush. I should have stayed hidden. I should have turned around and gone upstairs. But before I could move, my father looked up. Our eyes met. For a second there was silence. Then his face split into the widest smile I had ever seen. "Well, well." He nudged my mother with his elbow. "Elaine, look." She followed his gaze. Her expression flickered for half a second. Shame maybe. Or guilt. Or something I didn't want to name. Tyler noticed next. And he laughed. "Hey, Amelia," he called across the restaurant loud enough for everyone to hear. "Room 312 still needs fresh towels." Several diners turned to look. A few recognized me. You can always tell when someone recognizes you while you're cleaning. Their eyes linger half a second too long. Their smiles tighten. The whispers start immediately. I stood there in my wrinkled housekeeping uniform with rubber gloves on my hands and a supply cart beside me. My father lifted his wine glass toward me like he was making a toast. "Maybe now," he said, just loud enough for nearby tables to hear, "you'll finally learn respect." My brother chuckled. My mother looked down at the table. I didn't cry. I didn't run. I simply turned my cart around and pushed it back down the hallway. But something inside me changed that night. Something hardened. Because as I scrubbed a bathroom sink 30 minutes later, I remembered something my grandmother had said. "When the time comes, you'll know." And for the first time in 2 years, I wondered if that time was getting close. 3 weeks after the restaurant incident, I was cleaning out a cardboard box in my apartment closet. I had fallen behind on rent. My plan was to sell whatever I could online. Old textbooks, shoes, anything that might buy me another week or two. That's when I found my old phone. The screen cracked and the battery completely died. I'd replaced it a year earlier and forgotten about it. For some reason, I plugged it into the charger. The phone buzzed to life after a few minutes. Notifications started flooding the screen. Old text messages. Spam emails. Missed calls from numbers I didn't recognize. Then I noticed a voicemail. 3 years old. Dated 2 weeks after my grandmother's funeral. My heart started beating faster. I pressed play. A man's calm professional voice filled the room. "Miss Carter, this is David Langford from Langford and Pierce Law Offices. I'm calling regarding the estate of Helen Carter. There are several documents pertaining to her that require your attention. Please contact our office at your earliest convenience." The message ended. I stared at the phone. 3 years. 3 years I had no idea this call existed. Back then I'd been drowning in grief. After Grandma's funeral I barely checked my messages for weeks. My father had told the entire family that Grandma's estate had been simple. "Most of it went to charity," he'd said dismissively. "Nothing complicated." I'd believed him. Now my hands were shaking. I grabbed my current phone and dialed the law firm. A receptionist answered. "Langford and Pierce, how may I assist you?" "I'm trying to reach David Langford," I said. "He left me a voicemail years ago about my grandmother's estate." "Helen Carter." There was a pause. "I'm sorry," the receptionist said. "Mr. Langford retired last year due to health issues." "Oh. But let me check the file." I heard typing. Then silence. Then more typing. Her tone changed. Miss Carter, according to these notes, Mr. Langford attempted to reach you multiple times. Several calls went unanswered. My stomach tightened. Then a family representative contacted the office and informed us you weren't interested in pursuing the matter. What family representative? I asked slowly. Another pause. It says here. Richard Carter. My father. My chest went cold. He told you I declined? That's what the record indicates. I sat down on the edge of my bed. He said you were aware of the estate details and didn't wish to be contacted further. That's not true. I'm sorry, she said gently. I can leave a note for one of our current attorneys to review the file. Please do. I gave her my number. But when I hung up the phone, something told me I probably wouldn't hear back. Because my father had already done exactly what he always did. Intercepted. Controlled. Closed the door. But now I know something important. There had been something in my grandmother's estate meant for me. And my father had made sure I never received it. A month later, my father called. I almost ignored it. But curiosity won. Amelia, he said, his voice suddenly warm. Too warm. How are you doing? I'm fine. I've been thinking, he said. This situation has gone on long enough. What situation? You living like this? He sighed. Your mother misses you. I stared at the water stain on my ceiling. What do you want, Dad? Come home. The words landed heavily. Come home and do what? You can work at the company. We need help with the bookkeeping department. I'll pay you something. Not much at first, he added quickly. But you'll live at home. Save money. It sounded reasonable. Almost kind. And the things you told everyone about me? I asked quietly. Water under the bridge, he said. Come home and I'll make some calls. Fix your reputation. And if I don't? There was a pause. The warmth vanished instantly. Then you can keep scrubbing toilets. His voice turned cold. Your choice. I closed my eyes. I'll think about it. Don't think too long. The line went dead. That night my mother called separately. Amelia, she said softly. Please come home. Your father only wants what's best for you. I almost laughed. Does he? He loves you. In his own way. His way destroyed my life. Silence filled the line. Finally she said quietly. You're making this harder than it needs to be. I hung up. An hour later Tyler texted. Just come home already. You're embarrassing the family. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened my laptop and started applying to jobs outside South Carolina. Chicago. Dallas. Denver. Anywhere my father's name meant nothing. 2 weeks later, I discovered something that made my blood run cold. Because one night at the Harborview Lodge, while restocking towels near the restaurant vents, I overheard a conversation that revealed exactly what my father had planned for me next. The Harborview Lodge had thin walls and an even thinner ventilation system. If you stood close enough to the air grates near the linen closet on the second floor, you could hear almost everything happening in the restaurant below. Most of the time it was just clinking glasses and muffled conversations. But that night, I heard a voice that made my entire body freeze. My father's. I had been restocking towels when I heard him laugh. Richard, you always know how to make a deal sound good. Another man's voice followed. Older. Rough around the edges. I slowly stepped closer to the metal vent. The grate hummed softly with the sound of air moving through it. I crouched down and pressed my ear against the cool metal. I'm telling you, Frank, my father said, sounding pleased with himself, the timing couldn't be better. Frank. I knew that name. Frank Dalton owned Dalton Plumbing, one of the largest subcontracting companies in the county. He and my father had been circling each other for years trying to secure long-term construction partnerships. "So how does your daughter fit into this?" Frank asked. My heart skipped. "She's been difficult lately," my father said lightly. "You might have heard some rumors." Frank chuckled. "The theft thing?" "Exactly," my father said. "But that situation is under control." I felt my fingers tighten around the stack of towels in my lap. "She's working some housekeeping job now," he continued. "Scrubbing toilets, last I heard." Both men laughed. "Give it another few months," my father went on. "Eventually she'll realize she has no options." Frank hummed thoughtfully. "And then?" "Then she comes home." There was the sound of ice clinking in a glass. "And when she does," my father continued, "I introduce her to your son." My stomach dropped. "What?" Frank sounded amused. "Your boy's looking to settle down," my father said. "My daughter needs stability. Merge the families, merge the businesses." He laughed. Carter Development and Dalton Plumbing dominating the county. Frank let out a low whistle. "You're talking about arranging a marriage." "I prefer to call it a strategic alliance." My blood ran cold. "But will she agree to that?" Frank asked. My father chuckled. "Oh, she will." "How?" "Because by the time I'm done," he said casually, "she won't have any other choices." The conversation drifted into business numbers after that. Contracts. Construction projects. Profit margins. But I didn't hear any of it. I slid down the wall of the linen closet until I was sitting on the floor. The smell of bleach and detergent filled the small room. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. He wasn't just trying to control me. He was trying to sell me. An arranged marriage disguised as a business deal. My life traded like a contract between two companies. For the first time in years, I felt something stronger than fear. Anger. And in that moment I remembered my grandmother again. "When the time comes, you'll know." I didn't know what she had prepared. But I knew one thing with absolute certainty. I could not stay in Charleston. Not another month. Not another week. The next morning I started applying to jobs in cities I had never even visited. Chicago. Atlanta. Nashville. Anywhere far enough away that the Carter name meant nothing. I sent out dozens of applications. Finance firms. Accounting offices. Investment companies. But the responses were almost always the same. "We noticed a 2-year gap in your employment history. Can you explain why your previous references are unavailable? How would you describe your professional experience since graduation? How do you answer that question honestly?" My father told everyone I was a thief. So no one would hire me. I tried explaining the situation once. Just once. During a video interview with a small firm in Atlanta. The HR manager listened quietly as I stumbled through the explanation. When I finished, she smiled politely. "That sounds like a very complicated family situation." Corporate language. Which really meant, "We don't want that kind of drama." The rejection email arrived the next morning. After that, I stopped trying to explain. 3 weeks later I was sitting on the edge of my bed at 2 in the morning, scrolling through job listings with tired eyes. That's when I saw it. Mercer Financial Group. The largest financial firm in 3 states. Headquarters in Atlanta. They handled everything from corporate investments to large-scale real estate portfolios. It was the kind of company people spent years trying to break into. I applied anyway. Mostly out of habit. I didn't expect anything to come from it. Then 5 days later an email appeared in my inbox. Subject line. Interview invitation, Mercer Financial Group. I opened it 3 times before my brain processed what I was reading. Dear Miss Carter, we have reviewed your application and would like to invite you to an in-person interview at our Atlanta headquarters. Please note that this interview will be conducted personally by our CEO, Mr. Nathan Mercer. This is an unusual request, but Mr. Mercer has expressed specific interest in meeting with you. I stared at the screen. The CEO? Interviewing me? For an entry-level analyst position? It didn't make sense. CEOs didn't interview junior applicants. That was something HR managers did. For a moment I wondered if the email was fake. Or some kind of scam. But the address checked out. The company website matched. Everything looked legitimate. And then I heard my grandmother's voice in my head. When the time comes, you'll know. Before I could talk myself out of it, I clicked reply. Dear Sir or Madam, I am available at your earliest convenience. 2 days later I was sitting on a bus headed toward Atlanta. I had $43 in my wallet. A second-hand navy suit from Goodwill. And absolutely no idea why the CEO of Mercer Financial wanted to meet me. The night before the interview I stayed in a cheap motel near the bus station. The room smelled faintly like cleaning chemicals and old carpet. But it was clean. And it was mine. I hung my Goodwill suit in the bathroom and turned the shower on hot so the steam would smooth the wrinkles. Then I sat on the edge of the bed and practiced interview answers out loud. Tell me about yourself. I graduated with a degree in finance from the University of South Carolina. Why do you want to work at Mercer Financial? Your company's reputation for ethical investment practices aligns with my values. But the hardest question kept circling my mind. Why the 2-year gap in your work history? I practiced that answer 10 different ways. None of them felt convincing. Earlier that day my motel manager, Linda, had handed me an envelope before I left Charleston. Inside was $20. For bus snacks, she said. You don't belong here, Amelia. You never did. I almost cried right there in the motel lobby. Now, lying in the unfamiliar motel bed in Atlanta, I stared at the ceiling and thought about my grandmother. What had she tried to leave me? Why had a lawyer tried to contact me? And why did the CEO of Mercer Financial want to meet me personally? Eventually exhaustion pulled me into sleep. The next morning I put on my second-hand suit, took a deep breath, and walked toward the Mercer Financial headquarters. I didn't know it yet. But my grandmother's plan was about to unfold in a way I never could have imagined. The morning of my interview, my phone rang just as I turned the corner onto Peachtree Street. The Mercer Financial headquarters towered above the surrounding buildings. Glass and steel stretching 26 stories into the Atlanta sky. I slowed down when I saw the caller ID. Dad. My thumb hovered over the ignore button. For a moment I considered letting it ring. But curiosity won. I answered. Hello? Amelia. My father's voice sounded calm. Too calm. I hear you have an interview today. My stomach dropped. How do you know that? Tyler follows your little social media accounts. I closed my eyes. Of course he did. I'd posted a simple Instagram story the night before. A picture of the Atlanta skyline from the bus window. Captioned, New Beginnings. Nothing about Mercer Financial. Nothing about the interview. But apparently that had been enough. Your brother did some digging, my father continued. Checked companies in Atlanta hiring entry-level finance staff. And there it was. I gripped my phone tighter. This has nothing to do with you. Oh, I disagree. His tone turned colder. I know people in finance, Amelia. The industry is smaller than you think. He let the silence hang. One phone call, he said quietly. That's all it takes. A knot formed in my chest. You wouldn't. Come home, he said. Stop this foolishness. Last chance. I was standing 50 feet away from the building that might change my life. and my father was trying to burn it down from 300 miles away. My phone buzzed. A text message from Tyler appeared on the screen. "You're done, sis. Dad already called them. Enjoy the bus ride home." My hands started shaking. I looked up at the Mercer Financial Building again. Sunlight reflected off the glass windows. For a moment doubt crept into my mind. Maybe my father had already poisoned this opportunity too. Maybe I was about to walk into another polite rejection. Another closed door. Another reminder that I couldn't escape him. But I had come too far to turn back. I silenced my phone, straightened my second-hand blazer, and walked through the front doors. The lobby of Mercer Financial looked like another world. Polished marble floors. A 3-story atrium filled with natural light. Modern art installations hanging from thin steel cables. Men and women in tailored suits moved confidently between elevators. Their footsteps echoed sharply against the stone floor. I suddenly felt painfully aware of my scuffed shoes. And my thrift store suit. Still, I forced myself to approach the reception desk. "Good morning," I said. "My name is Amelia Carter. I have an interview scheduled." The receptionist looked down at her computer. She typed for a moment. Then she looked up. Her expression changed slightly. "Yes, Miss Carter," she said. "You're expected." She reached into a drawer and handed me a visitor badge. "Mr. Mercer will see you personally." My heart skipped. "The CEO?" "That's correct." She gestured toward a set of elevators to the left. "Take the private elevator to the 26th floor. His assistant will meet you there." Nothing about this made sense. CEOs didn't personally interview entry-level candidates. There had to be some mistake. Or worse. My father had already called. And this entire meeting was about to turn into a humiliation I couldn't yet see coming. The elevator doors slid open. I stepped inside alone. 26 floors passed in complete silence. When the doors opened, I stepped into a quiet reception area. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the entire Atlanta skyline. Expensive furniture sat arranged neatly across a plush gray carpet. An assistant stood from behind a desk as soon as I entered. "Miss Carter?" "Yes. Mr. Mercer is expecting you." She walked me down a hallway lined with framed photographs. I recognized several of them. Mercer Financial's early offices. Newspaper articles. Awards. At the end of the hallway she stopped in front of a large wooden door. "Go right in," she said gently. "He's been waiting for you." "Waiting for me?" I pushed the door open. Nathan Mercer stood near the window with his hands clasped behind his back. He turned when I entered. He looked older than I expected. Early 50s. Silver hair at his temples. The kind of presence that immediately filled a room. But what struck me most was his expression. He wasn't looking at me like a job candidate. He was looking at me like someone he'd been expecting. "Miss Carter," he said warmly. "Please sit." I sat in the chair across from his desk. "Mr. Mercer," I began. I'm not entirely sure why. He raised a hand gently. "Before we discuss the interview," he said, "there's something I need to give you." He walked toward a large wall safe behind his desk. An old Mosler safe with polished brass dials. He entered a combination. The door opened with a quiet click. From inside he pulled out a thick yellow envelope. The paper looked old. The edges slightly worn. He placed it carefully on the desk in front of me. My breath caught. On the front of the envelope, written in elegant handwriting I would recognize anywhere, were the words: "To be opened only when my granddaughter Amelia Carter arrives for an interview at Mercer Financial." Beneath it was a date. 15 years ago. I was 12 years old when it was written. My hands started trembling. "That's my grandmother's handwriting," I whispered. Nathan Mercer nodded slowly. Helen Carter was the first person who ever believed in me, he said. 20 years ago, I was a young man with a business plan and no investors. Every bank in Georgia rejected me. He leaned back against his desk. Your grandmother wrote me a check for $200,000. When everyone else said no. My throat tightened. She asked for only one thing in return. He looked at the envelope. She told me that someday a young woman named Amelia Carter might come looking for a job. She said if that ever happened, give her this. My eyes blurred with tears. So I placed a flag in our hiring system, he continued. Your name. Your social security number. The moment your application came through our HR database, I was notified. My heart pounded in my chest. He's been waiting 15 years, he said softly, for an application that might never have come. He gently pushed the envelope toward me. Your grandmother said you might need help one day. And when that day arrived, I was supposed to give you this. My fingers closed around the envelope. The wax seal cracked as I opened it. And what I found inside was something that would change my life forever. My hands wouldn't stop shaking as I broke the wax seal. The paper inside the envelope felt fragile, like something that had been waiting a very long time to be touched. Nathan Mercer stepped away from the desk, giving me space. The office fell completely silent. I slowly pulled the contents from the envelope. There were 3 items inside. The first was a handwritten letter. Cream-colored stationery. My grandmother's unmistakable elegant script. The second item was a certificate. Official. Stamped and notarized. The Mercer Financial Group logo sat at the top. And beneath it were words that made the room feel like it tilted sideways. Certificate of Stock Ownership. Amelia Grace Carter. Founding stakeholder, 7% ownership. Mercer Financial Group. I blinked. Then I read it again. And again. I don't understand, I whispered. Nathan Mercer pulled a chair closer to the desk and sat beside me. When your grandmother invested in Mercer Financial 20 years ago, he said gently, she insisted the shares not be placed in her name. Instead, she placed them in a legal trust. For you. I stared at him. For me? You were 6 years old at the time, he said. She told me she wanted to make sure no one could ever take it away from you. My throat tightened. Why didn't anyone tell me? The trust agreement required secrecy, he explained. It was designed to remain sealed until one of 2 things happened. He raised 2 fingers. Either your grandmother passed away, or you came to Mercer Financial looking for employment. I slowly lowered my eyes back to the certificate. By structuring it that way, he continued, she ensured that your father could never interfere with it. A tear slipped down my cheek. My grandmother had known. She had known exactly what kind of man my father was. The third item in the envelope was a small leather journal. The cover was worn and the pages inside had yellowed with age. I opened it carefully. The first page was dated nearly 30 years earlier. April 1996. Richard screamed at Elaine tonight about the grocery budget. Amelia is only a baby and already the tension in that house feels wrong. My breath caught. I turned the page. September 2001. Richard refused to pay for Amelia's piano lessons. Said daughters don't need hobbies that cost money. Another page. June 2007. Richard told Amelia she couldn't apply to out-of-state universities. Said it would be wasted on her. Page after page. Year after year. My grandmother had documented everything. Every moment she witnessed my father's control. Every comment he made that reduced me. Every warning sign. She had been watching. Preparing. Planning. Nathan Mercer spoke quietly beside me. Your grandmother knew exactly what kind of man your father was. She couldn't stop him directly. So she built you an escape route. I wiped my eyes with the sleeve of my blazer. She loved you very much, he added. I nodded silently. Then I unfolded the handwritten letter. My dearest Amelia. If you are reading this, it means two things. First, that I am no longer there to protect you myself. And second, that you have found your way to Mercer Financial. I am sorry I could not give this to you personally. But I knew your father would never allow it. Richard Carter believes control is love. He believes obedience is respect. I watched him become that man slowly over the years. Your mother hoped she could change him. She could not. I could not save her from that marriage. But I swore to myself that I would save you. From the moment you were born I saw something in you your father could never tolerate. You questioned him. You challenged him. You dreamed beyond the limits he set. And I knew that one day he would try to break you for it. So I built you an insurance policy. 20 years ago, I invested in a young man named Nathan Mercer. He had talent, vision, and integrity. I believed in him. And I believed that one day the company he built would be strong enough to protect my granddaughter. The shares I purchased are legally yours. No one can take them. Not your father. Not anyone. By the time you read this, those shares will likely be worth more than enough for you to build your own life. Use them wisely. Build something that belongs to you. And remember this, my sweet girl. You do not owe anyone your obedience. Not even family. Especially not family that treats love like a leash. Live free, Amelia. That is all I have ever wanted for you. All my love. Grandma. The letter slipped from my hands as I pressed my palms to my face. I couldn't stop crying. For years I had believed I was completely alone. But my grandmother had been protecting me the entire time. Nathan Mercer quietly stepped outside the office to give me a moment. When he returned a few minutes later, I had mostly composed myself. My eyes were red and my mascara was ruined. But something inside me felt lighter. Like a weight I didn't even realize I was carrying had finally lifted. There's something else you should know, he said as he sat back down. My stomach tightened. What? Your father called me this morning. I felt the air leave my lungs. What did he say? The same thing he's apparently told everyone else. That you're a thief. That you stole from your family. That I shouldn't trust you. My fingers tightened around the letter. And you? I listened, Nathan said calmly. Then I reviewed the documentation your grandmother left behind. He tapped the stock certificate lightly. And then I realized something. What? Your father just tried to slander a founding shareholder of my company. A small smile crossed his face. Technically speaking, Amelia, you're one of my bosses. I stared at him. My father had spent 2 years trying to destroy my reputation. And this morning he had unknowingly called the CEO of a company that I partly owned. Nathan leaned back in his chair. I must admit, he said thoughtfully, I've never seen someone sabotage themselves quite so efficiently. For the first time in 2 years. I smiled. Nathan leaned forward slightly. There's something I'd like to propose. I wiped my eyes. I'm listening. Next week Mercer Financial is hosting our annual charity gala. It's our biggest event of the year. Investors, executives, politicians. He paused. And your father will be there. My stomach twisted. He's invited? He invited himself. Nathan's tone was dry. He's been trying to secure a development partnership with us for months. So what exactly are you proposing? I asked. He folded his hands on the desk. I would like to introduce you at the gala. As Mercer Financial's newest senior financial analyst. And as a founding shareholder of the company. I imagined my father's face when he realized the daughter he tried to destroy owned part of the company he was trying to impress. Part of me wanted to say yes immediately. But another part hesitated. I don't want revenge, I said quietly. That's not who I want to be. Nathan nodded. Your grandmother said you'd say that. He stood and walked toward the window overlooking Atlanta. This isn't revenge, he said. It's truth. You've spent 2 years being called a thief. Your father controls that narrative because no one has challenged it. He turned back toward me. The gala simply gives you the chance to stand in the light. I thought about it for a long moment. Then I nodded. Yes. Because my father had no idea what my grandmother had prepared 15 years earlier. And in 1 week, he was about to find out. The Grand Meridian Hotel in downtown Atlanta looked like something out of a movie. Crystal chandeliers hung from ceilings so high they almost disappeared into shadow. Soft jazz music floated through the ballroom from a quartet set up near the stage. Waiters in white gloves moved through the crowd carrying trays of champagne and delicate appetizers. Everywhere I looked there were people who ran companies, funded startups, or sat on the boards of organizations whose names I had only ever seen in financial magazines. The guest list read like a directory of the Southeast's most powerful business figures. Executives. Politicians. Investors. Old money families. New money founders. And somewhere among them tonight was my father. I stood in a private room on the second floor overlooking the ballroom below, watching the guests arrive through the tall windows. The Mercer Financial Public Relations team had insisted on handling everything. They had brought in a stylist, a makeup artist, someone who specialized in corporate image consulting. The woman had laughed softly when I told her I owned exactly one formal dress. You won't need it tonight, she said. Now I stood in front of the mirror wearing something that didn't feel like it belonged to me. A simple navy evening dress. Elegant, structured, understated. Pearl earrings. My hair swept neatly into a low chignon. I looked professional. Confident. Like someone who had always belonged in rooms like this. Not someone who had been scrubbing motel bathtubs 3 days ago. I held my clutch tightly in my hands. Inside it was the one thing I refused to leave behind tonight. My grandmother's letter. Through the window I spotted a familiar black sedan pulling up to the entrance below. My chest tightened. My father stepped out first. Richard Carter moved through the entrance with the same confidence he carried into every room. Shoulders straight. Suit perfectly tailored. His expression already wearing that polite business smile he used at networking events. My mother followed behind him in a soft silver dress. Her posture elegant, practiced. Her smile calm and distant. Tyler walked in last. He barely looked up from his phone as they entered. From above, they looked exactly like the family people expected them to be. Successful. Put together. Untouchable. But I knew the truth. And tonight, everyone else was about to learn it too. A knock came at the door behind me. Nathan Mercer's assistant stepped inside. Miss Carter? I turned. Yes. Mr. Mercer will begin his opening remarks in about 15 minutes. She paused, studying me for a moment. You look wonderful. Thank you. She hesitated again before speaking. For what it's worth, everyone here at Mercer Financial knows what your father tried to do. My throat tightened. And we're glad you're here. She gave me a small encouraging nod and stepped back out into the hallway. I turned back to the window. Below me the ballroom had filled with nearly 200 guests. Clusters of conversations formed around cocktail tables. Laughter floated through the air. My father moved confidently through the crowd. Shaking hands. Passing out business cards. Positioning himself carefully near groups of executives. I could almost predict exactly what he was saying. How he introduced himself. How he subtly mentioned Carter Development's recent projects. How he hinted at his company's potential interest in working with Mercer Financial. Eventually he made his way toward the bar. Nathan Mercer stood there speaking with a woman I recognized from the company website. Rachel Whitaker, Mercer Financial's Chief Operations Officer. My father approached them with the easy confidence of someone who believed he belonged anywhere. He shook Nathan's hand enthusiastically. I couldn't hear the conversation from this distance, but I could read body language well enough. Nathan listened politely. Rachel nodded occasionally. My father gestured broadly while speaking. Selling himself. Selling his company. Then something shifted. Even from upstairs I could see it. My father leaned closer to them. His smile changed slightly. The confident expression turning into something more smug. Something familiar. He was talking about me. I knew it instantly. The small shake of Nathan's head. Rachel's polite expression fading into confusion. My father laughed. That same laugh I had heard in the motel restaurant. The laugh of someone who believed he controlled the narrative. Rachel excused herself and moved away. Nathan remained standing there. My father continued talking. Still confident. Still convinced he was winning the conversation. He had no idea what was coming. Miss Carter. Nathan's assistant had returned. It's time. My heart began pounding. Mr. Mercer will introduce you after his opening remarks. You'll enter through the side door. I nodded. She gave my shoulder a light squeeze before stepping away. I stood there alone for a moment. 5 minutes. 5 minutes until the story my father had been telling everyone for 2 years finally collapsed. 5 minutes until he learned something my grandmother had planned 15 years earlier. Below me the jazz music faded. Nathan Mercer stepped onto the stage and took the microphone. The room gradually quieted. Good evening, everyone, his voice echoed through the ballroom. Thank you for joining us for Mercer Financial's annual charity gala. Polite applause rippled through the crowd. He spoke for a few minutes about community partnerships, philanthropy, the company's 20-year history. Then his tone shifted. Before we continue tonight, he said, I would like to introduce someone very important. Someone who represents the values this company was built on. I heard the assistant whisper behind me. That's your cue. My fingers tightened around the clutch. I took a deep breath. Then I stepped through the side door and into the ballroom. 200 faces turned toward me. My heels clicked against the marble floor as I walked toward the stage. The navy dress caught the light from the chandeliers above. I kept my eyes forward. Not looking at my father yet. But I felt the moment he saw me. A sharp gasp somewhere in the crowd. The sound of glass shattering. I glanced briefly to my left. Tyler stood near the bar staring at the broken champagne flute at his feet. Nathan smiled as I reached the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, he said warmly. Please welcome Mercer Financial's newest senior financial analyst. He paused. Miss Amelia Carter. Polite applause filled the room. I stepped up beside him. And finally, I turned to look at my father. Richard Carter stood frozen in the middle of the ballroom. His face had gone completely white. My mother gripped his arm tightly. Tyler looked like he couldn't quite understand what he was seeing. I smiled gently. Not cruelly. Not triumphantly. Just calmly. And then my father started moving toward the stage. His face twisted with fury. Amelia. His voice cut through the ballroom like a knife. What the hell do you think you're doing here? The room fell silent. 200 people turned to watch as Richard Carter stormed across the floor toward his daughter. And the truth he had spent 2 years trying to bury was about to explode in front of all of them. Gasps rippled through the ballroom as my father pushed his way through the crowd. Richard Carter had never been a quiet man, but tonight his voice cut through the room like a blade. What is this? He shouted. His finger pointed straight at me. This woman shouldn't even be here. 200 people turned to watch. Waiters froze mid-step. The jazz quartet had stopped playing entirely. Nathan Mercer stepped forward calmly beside me. "Mr. Carter," he said evenly, "I suggest you lower your voice." "You don't understand," my father snapped, gesturing wildly toward me. "She's a thief. I told you that this morning. She stole from her own family." A murmur spread through the crowd. My father's voice grew louder. "She's not qualified to work for a company like this." Nathan raised an eyebrow. "Not qualified?" My father laughed harshly. "That girl couldn't even hold down a real job. You're making a mistake hiring her." Nathan glanced briefly toward me, then back to my father. "I'm well aware of Miss Carter's qualifications. You can't possibly." "I'm also aware," Nathan continued calmly, "that you've spent the past 2 years contacting every employer in Charleston attempting to destroy your daughter's career." The room grew even quieter. My father's face darkened. "That's none of your business." "It becomes my business," Nathan said smoothly, "when you attempt to slander someone connected to my company." My father scoffed. "Connected?" Nathan turned toward the audience. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, raising his voice slightly so the entire ballroom could hear him, "there is something important you should know." He paused, letting the silence stretch. Then he spoke again. "Amelia Carter is not simply a new employee of Mercer Financial." My father folded his arms smugly. "Oh, this should be good." Nathan looked directly at him. "Miss Carter is also a founding shareholder of this company." The room erupted in confused whispers. My father blinked. "What?" Nathan continued calmly. 20 years ago, before Mercer Financial became the company it is today, a woman named Helen Carter invested $200,000 in my business when no one else would." He gestured toward me. "She placed the shares in her granddaughter's name." My father's face drained of color. Nathan's voice remained steady. "Amelia Carter owns 7% of Mercer Financial." The whispers grew louder. Investors leaned toward each other. Executives exchanged stunned glances. Nathan finished the sentence quietly. "She has been a founding shareholder since she was 6 years old." My father opened his mouth. Closed it. Opened it again. No words came out. "This is ridiculous," he finally sputtered. "A scam." My mother was senile. "These documents can't possibly." "They've been verified by 3 independent law firms," Nathan interrupted. "Notarized. Filed with the state. There is absolutely no ambiguity." My father's face turned red. "I'll sue," he snapped. "I'll sue this entire company." Nathan tilted his head slightly. "For honoring a legal investment made 20 years ago?" My mother had pushed her way through the crowd by now. She grabbed my father's sleeve. "Richard," she whispered urgently, "everyone is watching." He shook her off violently. "You," he snarled, pointing at me again. "You ungrateful little—" His voice shook with rage. "After everything I've done for you. I raised you. I fed you. And this is how you repay me?" I stepped forward slowly, taking the microphone Nathan offered. The room was silent again. "I didn't come here tonight to humiliate anyone," I said calmly. My father glared at me. But he had already lost control of the room. Every eye was on him. I continued. "For 2 years I was called a thief. I was blacklisted from every job in my hometown. I was mocked for working the only job I could find. I was told that if I wanted to survive, I had to surrender my independence." A few people in the audience shifted uncomfortably. I turned toward my father. Not angry. Not bitter. Just clear. The $1,200 my father calls theft was money he gave me for textbooks. I paid back every cent. I still have the receipts. I paused. But even if I hadn't, would that justify 2 years of sabotage? Would that justify trying to force your daughter into a business marriage? Murmurs rippled through the crowd. My father looked around wildly, realizing people were no longer on his side. My grandmother saw something I didn't, I continued. She understood what kind of situation I was growing up in. She couldn't change it. So she prepared something else. I lifted the microphone slightly. A way out. I looked directly at my father. Dad. I don't hate you. His expression flickered with surprise. But I'm done. I'm done asking for your approval. I'm done letting you define my worth. I took a breath. This is my boundary. I wish you well. But I will never allow you to control my life again. I stepped back from the microphone. For a moment the room was completely silent. Then someone started clapping. Another person joined. Within seconds the entire ballroom erupted into applause. My father stood there frozen, his carefully built image collapsing around him. Finally he turned and stormed toward the exit. My mother hurried after him. Tyler followed silently behind them. No one stopped them. 200 people simply watched them leave. When the doors closed behind them, the room seemed to exhale. The jazz quartet slowly resumed playing. Conversations restarted. But something had shifted. People began approaching me. One by one. Business cards. Handshakes. Quiet apologies. I'm sorry I believed those rumors. If I'd known the truth. Your grandmother would be very proud. Nathan eventually returned to my side with a glass of sparkling water. How are you holding up? He asked. I said slowly, I'm still processing everything. He smiled. You'll also want to meet with our legal team soon. Your shares are currently valued at roughly $2.1 million. The number barely registered. And your office will be ready Monday, he added. If you're still interested in the analyst position. I laughed. Yes. I'm very interested. 1 month later my life looked completely different. I had a small office on the 15th floor of Mercer Financial. Nothing extravagant. But the window overlooked the Atlanta skyline. My name was on the door. I had my own apartment now. A 1-bedroom with hardwood floors and a balcony. Every morning I walked to work past coffee shops and busy sidewalks. Every evening I returned to a home that was truly mine. News about the gala spread quickly through the business community. 3 of my father's largest contracts disappeared within weeks. Companies didn't want to work with someone who had publicly admitted to sabotaging his own daughter. Carter Development still existed. But smaller. Quieter. Less respected. My mother called once. Can you forgive us? She asked softly. I forgive you, I said. And I meant it. But forgiveness didn't mean returning to the same life. I'm not coming back, I told her gently. I can't live under those conditions anymore. She cried quietly. Then she said goodbye. Tyler sent a short apology text a few weeks later. I replied with 2 words. Thank you. Nothing more. My father never contacted me. I didn't expect him to. One quiet Sunday afternoon, I drove to Hilton Head. I brought a bouquet of yellow roses. My grandmother's favorite. I sat beside her headstone for a long time. You saved me, I said softly. You saw it coming before anyone else. The wind moved gently through the trees. I'll make you proud, I whispered. I promise. Sometimes I still carry her letter in my wallet. The paper is worn now from being folded and unfolded so many times. The words that stay with me most are the ones she wrote at the end. Live free, Amelia. That's what she wanted for me. And that's exactly what I'm doing. Because if these past 2 years taught me anything, it's this. The people who truly love you don't control you. They protect you by giving you choices. By building foundations you can stand on. And by trusting you to build your own future. And sometimes, The door you need has already been quietly built for you. You just have to keep walking until you find it. If this story meant something to you, share it with someone who might need to hear it. And don't forget to subscribe to Women Reddit Stories for more stories like this. Take care of yourself. You deserve a life that belongs to you.